Hello, my name is Simon Double from Solaria Racing, and welcome to Inside the Rails, a monthly podcast for horse racing enthusiasts everywhere. We're sponsored by the RSA, the Racehorse Syndicates Association, so as ever, big thank you to them. And of course, I'm joined by my regular co-host, Phil Boyle from BG Racing. How are you, Phil, and are you enjoying this recent spell of hot weather?
I'm fine, thank you, Simon. And yes, I am actually. I know a lot of people start moaning that it gets too hot, but I'm not one of those. I do like a bit of air conditioning, but I also like a bit of time in the sun.
Good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, we Brits, we do moan about the weather quite a lot, don't we? But
do.
There we go. Now, look, last month we interviewed Debbie Hay from Take the Reins. This month we got an interview with special guest Stephen Wallis from the Jockey Club.
Yeah, it was great to hear about all the great work that Take the Reins are doing. I really enjoyed that interview. And if any of our listeners missed that episode, then please be sure to download it. It is really interesting. And if you did miss it, why don't you follow us to make sure that you get the new episodes automatically? And of course, if you do enjoy the podcast, give us a review or a rating or recommend us to a friend as well.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, look, I'm looking forward to chatting to Stephen Wallis, but we've got a few minutes to catch up. First of all, did you have a good weekend?
I did. It was, it was a hot one, wasn't it? And a feast of sport that we could get stuck into. The Sky TV box took a bit of a pounding on Sunday as I wanted to keep tabs on the final round of the British Open Golf, the last stage of the Tour de France, the British Grand Prix, the T20 International, and some horse racing. So I don't know how I managed to cram it all in. It was a late night on Sunday night, watching everything on catch-up. But I had all that action, and instead of being there to watch something live or settled in front of the TV with a cold drink, I was actually out with some friends having a picnic and doing a treasure hunt. So not very successful at watching it live. Did you manage to see anything?
Equally, sadly, not very much. I was co-hosting a barbecue for neighbours on Sunday, about a dozen of us. So I was on culinary duties, and for much of the weekend, I was up to my eyes in chicken thighs and Thai marinade. not to mention homemade burgers. I did manage to catch up on the sporting news, but Phil, tell the listeners what's been going on in the last month with BG Racing.
It's been quite a quiet one. We've only had one run in the last month. Our horse Far Too Beautiful ran last week, and it was a promising run. It was her third race, so that was a good race for her, and she'll be entitled to run in handicaps now. So that's pleasing, and we're looking to run her hopefully next week at Sandown, as long as we get a little bit of rain. I don't want to wish for rain, but if we get some, it would help our chances of getting a race. But yeah, we had a good trip to Lingfield. We were very well looked after there. They allocated us an area where all of my shareholders could all sit together. So we had a really nice afternoon in the sun. Quite a decent crowd there. Yeah, it was a good day out. How about yourself? Have you been racing at all?
Yes, I had Dancing in the Woods, who was at Newmarket a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, he goes again there tomorrow. Ran very well. It wasn't really enough pace in the race. I think it was a legitimate excuse, but I still think there's a big race in this horse. I will give a big mention to Linda Burton, who runs a runner's lounge there for owners. She does an absolutely splendid job, and we were looked after regally, and looking forward to going back there tomorrow. I also did my first hospitality event in 21 months last Friday at Newbury. Yeah, it was lovely to be back there. Great weather, great racing. There were one or two teething problems, and I think I would just put this plea out to people who are going to any hospitality event, whether it's racing or otherwise, really. Do spare a thought for people organising these events. The hospitality industry is really struggling. They've lost a lot of staff who've now just gone away and not come back. And they are struggling a little bit to sort of train up staff as quickly as possible. So, but to be fair to Newbury, they did apologise and they're compensating me quite nicely. So, but just spare a thought, people, racegoers, if you are going, just give people a little bit of slack. Just changing tack for a minute, I suppose really, Phil, we ought to talk about the Panorama programme on the treatment of horses and about horses when they get retired. I suppose we ought to. I didn't want to watch it initially, because I thought it would be a bit upsetting, and indeed it was. I did watch it on catch-up, but sad to see a negative story about racing, and I really don't think it's typical of what goes on. What are your thoughts, Phil?
No, I agree with that. I think the first thing to say, though, is that every case of a horse being mistreated is one we all want to see investigated and any issues in that area getting addressed.
Absolutely.
Because, we all love our horses and we don't want to see anything bad happening to any of them, whether they're racing or in retirement. But these types of programme and stories do typically use the data to portray one side of a situation. And whilst that's entirely valid and entirely accurate, it can sometimes make things sound like they're the norm when I don't think they really are. I mean, you'll be aware the British Horse Racing Authority did a lot of work in the last couple of years to try and keep tabs on retired horses. And my experience, both personal and from other owners and trainers that I've met, is that horse welfare is always given really great importance. I mean, personally, I've retired several horses from racing, and in all cases, they've gone to a new home that I've investigated personally, or I've been recommended by someone I trust. And the trainers are always on the lookout for good homes for retired horses. And in my experience, the horses get great care after racing. I'm not suggesting, I would hasten to add, that there are no issues. There obviously are, and some of them were highlighted by that programme. But I'm sure similarly I could make a documentary highlighting great aftercare of horses in retirement, quoting accurate data that would then leave the viewers thinking that in all cases things were as good as they possibly could be. And that also might be misleading. So there is a sort of an area in the middle, and I think it's important that we don't get too polarised on these things. That's my view anyway. Your experience in terms of retiring your horses?
I echo those thoughts, absolutely. I mean, but all the horses that we ever bought and raced were swans. Some of them sadly are a little bit slow, and I have to confess, I bought some fast horses, and sadly I bought some slow ones who've just not been cut out for it. But I mean, one example, I had a little horse called Chilton Secret, lovely little filly by Saki Secret. She just wasn't quick enough, but she went up to Worcestershire to do polo cross, and had a whale of a time up there. And yeah, I've 27 years, I think 26 years I've been in racing. The trainers I've worked with, Dean Ivory, Paul Webber, everybody they always do their utmost to retire horses and make sure they have a happy life. So yeah, it wasn't, I didn't think it was representative of what goes on at all. Let's move to more positive notes. We've got a big race coming up, the King George. By the time most of you listeners listen to this podcast, the race will have been run. So you can give your views. Let us know as to whether Phil and I got it right as to what we think will happen in this race. But it is a big race, isn't it? Of course, it was known as the race of the century with Grundy and Bustino many years ago. I think it was 1975, wasn't it, Phil? I think. Were you around then, 1975?
I would have only been 6 in 1975. I wasn't too far into my racing at that stage.
Well, look, it was a great race, and it's always a great race. Now, look, declarations have just closed for this. There were only 4 runners in the Eclipse, and there are going to be 6 runners in this year's King George. It's known as the clash of the generations over a mile and a half. It's a fascinating contest. I think one of the conundrums really is the ground for many of these horses. We've got Aidan O'Brien with 2 runners. 2 of the 6. He declared his 2, Love and Broom, pretty much at the last minute. Broom is a big outsider. Love is the hot favourite. She brings Royal Ascot form to the table. She's won 5 Group 1s. She won the Prince of Wales' Stakes after a very impressive, really, 300-day absence. And then, of course, we got the Derby form, represented by the impressive 4.5 length winner Adiyar for Godolphin. Question mark for me a little bit is ground, actually. He's not run on ground quicker than good. Good to soft when he won the Derby. Of course, he does get £8, which I think will make a difference with the weight for age. You've got Mishriff for the Gosdens, John and Sadie Goldstone. Little bit disappointing in the Eclipse, but I think he ran with a choke out that day, didn't quite get home. But he's joint top rated, so he ought to have a chance on ratings. Got Wonderful Tonight, owned by Chris Wright, trained by David Minutier. The mount of champion jockey Hosheen Murphy. But really, all that horse's form is on soft or heavy going. One I think is quite interesting is Lone Eagle for Martin Mead. Went so close in the Irish Derby after opening up a 3-length lead under Frankie and was mugged on the line by Hurricane Lane. But he's subsequently, Hurricane Lane that is, has gone on to win the Grand Prix de Paris by 6 lengths, admittedly on very soft ground at Longshot. I think he could be value. Frankie is seeking a record 8th King George. Now, a question for you, Phil. He currently holds the record of 7 wins. Who's the other jockey? And you've only got one chance at this.
I'm going to go Lester Piggott.
Well done. I knew you would knock me down. And Frankie's previous winners, well, we've got Lamtara, Swain, Daylami, Doyen. And what was the other horse that won 3 times? Quite recently.
Oh, no. Go on, you'll have to tell me.
Oh, okay, I'll give you another clue. 1, 2 Arc de Triomphe.
Very
John
recent
Gosden
times
trained.
then. Yes, absolutely. Can't remember the name of the filly now. Well, it's gone completely out of my head.
Frankie's darling Philip listeners, I've been really unfair here. I've landed this one on Phil. It's, of course, that super filly Enable, isn't it? One in 2017, 19 and 20. I think the only problem with Lone Eagle is Martin Mead, the trainer, would like a good gallop and also a drop of rain to slow the others down. I don't think we're going to get that. But anyway, Phil, I still quite fancy Lone Eagle. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that our editor, Callum, should probably cut out the section where I couldn't remember Enable's name, because that'll make me look silly. But my thoughts on the King George are that I hope that Love wins. She's not one for a bet, obviously, but she's a horse that I love watching. Excuse the pun. I was interested to see Snowfall in the entries, who's won the Irish Oaks and the English Oaks very impressively, and she looks like Love Mark II for the coming seasons. So it's interesting to see Aidan O'Brien having these fillies that keep churning out the Grade 1s. But Love is a horse I'm a big fan of, so I'm looking forward to watching her race.
So you think she's capable of giving £8, do you, to Adair for Godolphin?
I hope so. I don't know whether she definitely is, but I hope she is.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracking race anyway. I'd just like to give a mention to Audaria, a filly trained by James Fanshawe. She was second to Love at Royal Ascot. This filly is 11-4 favourite at Glorious Goodwood in the Group 1 fillies and mares over 1.25 miles. Just want to say really good luck to her and to owner Mrs. Alison Swinburne, daughter of former trainer Peter Harris, who gave me my first job in racing way back in 1994.
Marvellous. That's you've done them proud by giving them a mention.
Well, going back to the King George, whatever wins, it's certainly going to be a race to savour. And we have an interview to savour with Stephen Wallis from the Jockey Club. And he's on the line now. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good morning, Simon. Good morning, Phil. I'm in good order. Good order.
Now, we did actually meet Stephen, didn't we? I think about 3 or 4 years ago at the King's Head in Berkhamsted. But I should point out to our listeners, this wasn't to have a few pints at about 9:30 in the morning. We first met at a meeting of the RSA, the Racehorse Syndicates Association.
We did, and the RSA is an organisation. Well, at those days, it was called the RSACA, or it had a much longer name. But the Syndicate Association and the syndicators are people I've got a lot of time for, because I believe you are bringing more people into racehorse ownership than everybody else put together, which is why I, to use a horrible expression, reached out and wanted to work more closely with you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working with the association over the last 4 years.
Well, that's good news. Good to hear. Now, you have what seems to me a very grand title. You're Group Director of International and Racing Relations at the Jockey Club. But before we go into your role at the Jockey Club, I know that you've been in racing a long time, even longer than I have. Can you tell me about your story and how you got into racing in the first place?
Well, when you first asked me, I rather blandly said nepotism, but nepotism is probably the wrong word. My grandfather founded 2 racecourses in Ireland, Mallow and Limerick Junction. Funnily enough, neither of them are called Mallow or Limerick Junction now. One is called Cork and the other is called Tipperary. And then in turn, my late father, after an army career, approached to run the nascent Racecourse Holdings Trust. And he ran Racecourse Holdings Trust for over 20 years, including during that period blending together Cheltenham and Newmarket into one group, the buying and joining of Haydock to the group, and setting up what is now Jockey Club Racecourses. And my father was also on the board of Jockey Club Estates and lots of other racing interests. And I was going through a career blip, shall we say. I'd had a lot of ill health in my youth. And he said to me one day, "Why don't you work? It's so obvious. Why don't you work in racecourse management?" I said, "Dad, how can I? I can't follow you. I'd always be your son." And he said, "Don't be so stupid. You know what's going on. You've been brought up with it." And it wasn't actually